What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of the Love and Thunder podcast. I'm your host, Dave Lipson, again with another killer guest today. You guys know him from the interweb, from the internet, on Instagram, on YouTube. We've got Grant Hooper, aka Kipping It Real. What's up, brother? How you doing?
What's up? How are you today?
Dude, I'm so good. I'm so stoked to have you on. You like see people on the internet and you're like, man, if I met that person in real life, we'd be buds. We'd be friends.
I actually saw you at Wadapalooza, but we were both kind of busy. We were passing by. I was going to say what's up, but we were like going this way.
I was probably very standoffish. I think it's so funny because like I have a hard time with boundaries. I'm always like, I just talk to people. You end up giving way too much time. I love having fun. I get carried away.
The same thing, dude.
And usually it's like oversharing, overgiving, and every once in a while,
the same way,
I met Dave and he was standoffish, and I go, if I was gone. If I was, that does not sound like me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's too bad we missed each other. I hope we get to connect sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure.
For you guys out there, Grant, I don't know what you would call it. Grant is a savant of fitness satire. He likes to take the elements of fitness and training, especially for a lot of us come from that CrossFit background, which, by the way, CrossFit alone is just a fucking treasure trove of comedy, right? It's ridiculous on every level. And he does a fantastic job interjecting humor into it, which I think, Grant, honestly, it makes you relatable to people because I think everyone's thinking the same stuff. And when you go into a gym and you're duct taping your body together with your kinesio tape, and you're doing all the nutty stuff, imagine
butterfly kipping.
If aliens came down to observe humans, they just go like step foot into like the garage gym or the CrossFit gym. They're like, what the fuck are these people doing? There's a whiteboard and they're flailing around and their shirts are off and they're doing a bacon sizzle.
Their shirts are always off. I don't get it.
And now they're screaming at each other for some reason. And, and it's like, and even you contrast that with like the traditional gym environment, which is like, like going to a library. I have so many things about just the fitness industry in general. It's hilarious. And I think
you got to be able to laugh at some of the stuff, right? It's serious in the sense that we all need to be moving and doing something. And obviously there's more optimal ways of doing that. But the first start is to get in a gym, move, do something, clean up the diet, eat some protein. But then at the same time, once you get into that gym and you get into that community, there's so many stereotypes and just funny things to laugh at and have a good time,
Well, you lose a little bit of perspective too, because I think for you and we've probably been doing this for a while, so it's kind of like
the working out. Yes. CrossFit only 4 years.
But just, like living the lifestyle, training, eating, being interested in health and fitness, it becomes normalized. And to someone who doesn't do that, really the average person out there, it's like, it can seem very daunting, it can seem really hard.
Yeah.
So if you can find ways to find joy and finding joy in suffering and that kind of stuff, it can make it something that's a fun thing.
100%.
So tell me, man, give me a little bit of your background here. You tell me you lived in a bunch of different places. Yep. What's your story? What's like your training history, and how did you end up doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, sure. So thinking back, I did sports in high school, and I'm sure I was held back by the fact that I didn't really do outside training. I was kind of your classic underachiever. And that includes doing stuff outside of the gym. I only did golf and wrestling by the time it was my senior year, but still for wrestling, I obviously should have been in the gym and I really wasn't. So it was probably 2014 ish where I needed to make some changes, right? I won't get too deep into this, but big background in like addiction, opiates for like 9 years.
Yeah.
I want to say on and off, but not really. Part of that time was like are you familiar with Suboxone?
Yes.
Okay. So part of the time was a little bit more controlled. It wasn't like going out and robbing people and shooting up. I was under a doctor for Suboxone, which some people that works for, that's fine. And it kind of gave me that pause to be able to get my life back together. That's what it is. I don't think it's an ultimate solution. I don't judge anybody who was like, if you were a heroin addict and had no life and now you're on Suboxone, you've got a job and you're not robbing people, cool, whatever. But for me, like I had got on it and I never really was that bad on opiates. It was like a year of abusing opiates badly, but only for a year. And so I got on Suboxone and I was just on that for like 6 years, really kind of doing nothing.
Back up for a second.
Yep.
I want to dig into this a little bit, Grant,
Yeah.
because
Let's do it.
first off, that's a heck of a story, and it's funny because I've heard similar stories before, even by people in our same space, like Evan Slaughter. I don't know if you know him.
Yep.
His handle's called Fit to Serve,
Yep.
and same kind of thing. He was dealing with addiction. In fact, he kind of found pickleball and CrossFit in rehab. But it's funny to me how you could go from such a dark place and find a way to bring joy into the world, man. That's such a polar opposite, right? I mean, like, I think it's a very common thing now with the opioids. You're not alone, especially a lot of guys in fitness that kind of make that, whether it be opioids or sometimes it's different types of substance abuse, alcohol, that really decide that's it for me. I'm going to take this addictive personality and channel it into something healthy.
Exactly.
Or get to the root of it, of figuring out why do I want to not feel feelings?
I don't think people are prepared to deal with like life, and for whatever reason, some people, maybe you're dealt a little bit of a bad hand that puts you behind. Everybody's responsible and accountable. Some people start off a little further behind. Maybe you got dealt some bad hands in life or whatnot. That's okay. You do whatever you can today and you move forward, right? And so somewhere along the way, I think I didn't learn to properly deal with emotions like an adult, right? And then you put it off for all this time.
So what did that look like for you? Like, when the whole process of, and for some people it starts with, I had a back surgery and I got some Vicodin, and then it kind of snowballs.
Not me. Like, I don't have the good story like that. For me, it was somebody, I remember in high school, somebody had Vicodin in class, like my senior year, and was like, hey, I got this for my parents. It like makes you really happy. You want some? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I took them 2 Vicodins. The craziest thought process to think that I thought this way. But I remember the first time I even did 2 Vicodin because I had no tolerance. I remember actually thinking, oh, this is it. This is what I've been missing. I just need this all the time because like I feel like good, and like that girl that I've been kind of nervous to talk to, I can just talk to her right now. Like if I just had this all the time, everything would be good. Like I actually thought that in my 18-year-old. Like no clue. So I did that for like 3 months. Like every day I found a way to get it. All my buddies were getting their wisdom teeth pulled and I would buy their pills. And then I stopped. It was Vicodin, maybe 8 to 10 a day. So that would be considered very low end addiction. It's like, okay, it's going to suck, but you're not in too deep at this point.
So 8 to 10 Vicodin a day. Now, what is a normal prescription?
Yeah. Well, it can be that high if you've got pain issues, but a normal prescription would be to take 1 to 2, like twice a day.
Like hey, take a pill every 4 hours. Yeah,
exactly. It probably was 10 a day. It'd probably be, I'd say 3 times a day. I would, just take 2 to 4. This was in high school. I remember taking it at the drinking fountain, like every day at like lunch. I would just take a handful, 3 of them or something like that. And
did anybody notice any changes in you?
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit, but it's so long ago now because I'm 38. Yeah. So it's funny because it's a little bit hard to remember, but I do remember some people noticed some things, right? But I had already kind of been a little bit of a screw off. So maybe they just thought I was screwing off more. And then
case of the senior slump there or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was wrestling too, which I don't really know how I was doing that, but because it does cause a little bit of sedation depending on how much you're taking, so not something you'd really want to wrestle while taking. But anyway, I got off and I just remember it felt like the flu for 3 days. I remember being so ignorant. I called a hotline. I was at work at a job I was doing. I called a hotline and I asked them, I'm like, hey, I'm just suddenly like really depressed. I feel horrible. Like I'm
Mm.
super depressed. And it was like a Vicodin or addiction hotline. I said, I've been doing this for the last 3 months or so. I've been taking 10 Vicodin a day. Could this be what this is from? They're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, but it made me feel better because I had no clue. I'm like, what's wrong
Yeah.
with what?
You're like,
I
what's wrong with
literally,
me?
I literally didn't know, which is so stupid. I thought I could just do it and then just stop. And I thought I would want it, but I didn't know that there were actual physical ramifications, like that
Yeah.
your body would go into withdrawal. And then it disappeared until college. And I wish that was the end of the story. That would have been a smart, I mean, the mature individual would see the propensity for addiction there, just how
Yep.
much I liked it. And even in that little bit, like seeing your body and what happens to it when you get off, and hopefully make better decisions. But probably around maybe 21 or 22, somebody was getting Oxycontins. They were like dealing it. I was on a party street or something. And
Yep.
yeah, I ended up getting hooked for about a year on like Oxycontins.
So it kind of worked its way back into
It
your
worked
life.
its way back
Yeah.
in. And I knew too. I remember I knew, like when I took it, I knew this is trouble because this is even better. Like I didn't know you could, because it's a lot stronger than Vicodin.
Yeah. And it's gotten worse.
Yeah,
Like the drug
exactly.
companies have gotten smarter,
Yeah.
like uh
Yep. Yeah. So
and so
it
what
was
did that look
crazy.
like for you now? You're in college, you're kind of going through a
Yeah.
similar thing. Was it the same kind of, hey, I'm gonna, because it sounded like the first time you just decided to stop, maybe you ran out or you just decided like I'm gonna stop taking this. What did
Yeah.
it
I
look like
think I
the
just
second time?
decided the second time was, oh yeah, no, I got arrested with a bunch of marijuana. Like, and it was originally a felony charge because it was so much marijuana. I wasn't dealing it, but I was like, um, transporting it
You
with a
were
friend.
warehousing.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't like,
Your third party.
it was like a really big bag. Like, and my friend, this is like college. Like you had big bags of marijuana and
Which
people were
which college is this at?
Kent State University.
Hmm.
There wasn't much to do there. So yeah,
Yeah, it's where they had that
the
big
shooting.
shooting
Yeah.
back in the
Yep.
70s, Fort Denton,
Exactly.
Ohio. It was a good song.
Yeah. That's right.
Um,
That's right.
yeah, and that's crazy. So was that the
Yeah.
wake up call? Like, hey,
Yeah,
I
I
got
think
a
so. But
felony
I didn't,
charge now?
it wasn't, and I got it pled down. So I didn't get a felony, but it wasn't perfect after that. There was a lot of back and forth. But what ultimately ended up happening was I ended up on Suboxone for a really long time. Usually people know the amount of years that they've been addicted. I said 9 years. I think that might be the total exposure
Yeah,
to, because when I'm adding it up, it was 1 year on Oxy and maybe 7 years on Suboxone.
yeah. So like, how long was that stuff kind of in and out of your system?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was, I mean, but it was daily. If you count the Suboxone, it was daily for 7 years. And towards the end, what had happened was I was actually following the doctor's plans and then started to wean off. And as I weaned off, I remember, sort of emotions would kind of flood back in. And all it did was, if used properly, I think when used, it should be used very short term. It kind of gives you a moment to catch your breath. And then
yep.
you have to put good habits into place. Because look, if you're coming off heroin or something, it's so potent. And I don't know what that's like. That's like another level, I think. But if
Well,
you're
usually
coming off,
people graduate
yeah,
from oxy to heroin,
right,
for more
exactly.
cost effective
Yeah,
too. But
it is. Yeah, I know exactly. And so usually people they either end up back on, or they just can't get through the withdrawal, because even after the initial week of withdrawal you can still be really depressed for a long time, and you
yeah.
don't know you have no life skills. You've been wasting your life doing
And
this.
are those just like
Yeah,
dopamine and serotonin receptors in the brain that have been dysregulated from having that
it's
flood
got to
into?
be. It is so jacked up. Like
Yeah,
I've been through it a few times, and even weaning off Suboxone, the first, I would say, 90 days after I got off, um man, it was just dead, like just really
so is that what you
depressing.
mean when you mentioned like I tried to wean off it and those feelings started seeping back in? Was that
Yeah.
just kind of like the depressive state?
No, when I would go too fast. So at first I really wanted to cut it fast, and I did. I cut it like in half at first, and there's no danger in cutting. It's not like alcohol where they have to like monitor you and stuff. You can cut opiates. There's no risk involved. So you can go as fast as you want. And I remember, like, as soon as I like just was like, I've had enough of this, I cut it in half like twice or something. And, a couple days in, I was just getting hit with, I remember I was trying to add healthy things. So I was out for a run. I was running for, 2 or 3 miles. And I remember running and just being like, life almost hurt. Like
Yep.
it was an extra sensitivity. Like I was like crying on my
It was a
run.
painkiller, right? Like,
Yeah.
and I've heard that
Yeah.
with people on painkillers is like they're living in pain. Maybe they're not. There's no external pain. It's just that
Yeah.
the receptors are so dysregulated that
Yeah.
everything hurts.
I remember like smelling the spring breeze and not like crying, like this is beautiful, just being like not able to handle it. Like the colors were vivid, like, but not in a good way. I don't want to say, oh, everything was so beautiful. It was like, it like hurt. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean about things flooding back in and then regret flooding back in, because it's not completely off. You can never shut things completely off, but just the fact that, oh, I've wasted all this time and now gosh, how old was I? 28. I don't know. And this time is just gone now. And I think the drugs were helping keep that at bay just enough. And then it all came in at once. And it's almost too much to deal with,
That's
Yeah.
that's incredible, man.
Yeah.
Did you ever try any kind of like plant-based medicine, like psilocybin or anything to help you with that kind of
No,
addiction?
it kind of wasn't out there as much
Yeah.
as it is now. It was just starting to be mentioned and I didn't know enough about it. So I know it was around. It just wasn't being publicized as much.
Yeah, or
I've
wasn't
heard.
as available because it's not now there are practitioners that
Yeah.
will use psilocybin or ketamine therapy as just like a method of trying to break addiction,
Yeah.
or to really rewire the brain to some
And I'm
degree.
fine with practical. In the end, like, I don't want to have a crutch, but if you're doing practical solutions properly, that's good. Like, for instance, if somebody gets on Suboxone, that's great, but you have to actually be doing something. You have
Yes.
to be, and that's why I started
It,
working out and
it's got
whatnot.
to be serving a purpose where there actually is an end state, where it's not
Exactly.
just the end state is just staying on this forever.
100%. Yeah.
So hey, now in retrospect, right? Because I feel like distance gives you perspective.
Yeah.
Looking back on those years of addiction, was there anything that you can look back at that you knowing about yourself, like what was behind that? Like what was behind that addiction? Any kind of introspective of
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Honestly, if I had to say, I would say it's that mental illness runs in my family, although I've never really experienced, I've clinically had depression and anxiety, nothing too crazy, but I think I was always, if a normal person goes from a 4 to a 6, I very easily go from a 3 to a 7, maybe even a little bit more. And I
Yep.
think I think at my age, when I would go down, like let's say, I remember, this is kind of funny, but I'm also very obsessive, which can be great if used properly. If you
Yeah.
obsess on the right things and still have them in their proper place, and it's not everything. Like even good things, they can't be everything, right? You
I mean,
can't have
you're a
all your.
content producing machine.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But even that can't be everything. And I have to
Yeah.
check myself like, hey, what if this is gone tomorrow? Because it is a lot. I'd be devastated if tomorrow Instagram and YouTube both said you're shut down, you broke our terms. It would
Yep.
really hurt. But I've had things since then that would help me get through it, right? And I've got a family, I've got a dog. So the eggs aren't all in one basket, right?
Yep.
But back then, I don't know, man. I was very immature. I mean, we're talking about high school when it started. So I remember anytime I would have a girl that I really liked and it would ultimately end in failure, whether it be a breakup or just rejection, a girl that had really liked maybe, and finally I'd work up the courage and it would just end, or I would get rejected. I remember that would take me way down.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in my chair for days and just being like, when is this feeling going to stop?
Wasn't that like the perfect storm? Because the
Oh
depression
yeah.
and anxiety are kind of tied together when you think
Yeah.
about it. Anxiety is fear of the future, like what might
100%. Yep.
happen. So like,
What
hey,
might
I'm
happen.
afraid to walk up to that girl because of what might happen. And what you're describing in the next scenario is the depression. Like, oh my gosh, I have all this regret for what happened. And you think about both those scenarios, neither one are in the present tense.
100%.
They're both either,
That's a great point.
Out of control, right? And so part of that practice,
that's a great point.
I think that's where a lot of it comes from is it's very hard to be present. I struggle with it. It's really hard to be present, especially when you care so deeply, or I'll even go as far to say you end up in this cycle of trying to get love from external sources instead of being able to love yourself. Right. So for instance, with like,
I'm a punisher of myself, man. I'm a church guy too. And I've had literal pastors tell me, like, one week I had 3 pastors tell me, because I didn't want to hear it from the first. So I went and asked these, there were 3 pastors at my church, all young guys, really cool guys. And I was like, I went and asked them something. And the one guy said, dude, you are way too hard on yourself. This was a few years ago. Probably 3 years ago. Over just at first, me and my wife and my family are great now, but we had to go through marriage counseling and stuff. Some, smaller things, nothing crazy, nothing Mitchell Hooper level. Sorry, I had to throw that dig in there. But I remember going to them, and the first one told me, dude, you're beating yourself. And I'm like, no, I don't want to hear that. That's bull crap. So I went to the next one because I wanted them to tell me, yeah, dude, you're jacked up. You really, I felt like I needed to be punished because I did. Because anytime like you face accountability, we all do stupid things just to different levels, right? I don't want somebody to tell me I'm being too hard on myself. Literally all 3, they hadn't talked to each other within days of each other, all listened to me for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And they all said the same thing. They said, dude, you are just like punishing yourself.
Yeah. So, that's funny you mentioned
spot on.
That's something, Cammie says.
Yeah.
She just recently said to me, she's like, could you imagine if you talk to other people the way you talk to yourself?
Wow. That's like, crazy.
Shit.
Right.
And I think it all comes from figuring out how to just be able to love yourself and feel like you're worthy, and that's part of I think our journey as humans, especially as men, because I feel like guys do it. Guys are allowed to be 2 things, right? Yep. Angry or fine.
Right.
Angry or fine. You can't be anything.
Because dude, it doesn't matter if you made mistakes. What are you going to do about it? You're going to live there forever. I don't care and here's the thing. I don't care if you're 50 years old and you wasted your whole life. What are you going to do? Spend the next 20 years depressed over what could have been? You're 50. Like, it is what it is. Like, I have this watch sitting here. I don't know if you know him. Do you know the guy who owns Caffeine and Kilos, Danny, by chance?
I do. I've met those guys twice. Yeah.
Yeah. So he has a book that's a pretty decent book, and it's I just love the title of it. So I keep the watch here. I don't know if we can see it here. Win the next hour. So no matter, I love that because I can be inconsistent with my ADD and stuff and have completely wasted days. Unfortunately, I'm not one of the people who's necessarily the most regimented. I work very hard. But I'm not great at organizing things. So if I have the day before where I screwed everything up and now I'm like, man, I'm so behind. I like to think about the fact that, or if you have regrets and you're 50 or you're 40 or you're 30, guess what you can do? You have today. Like, all you have to do is win today or even win the next hour and then worry about the rest.
So I think that, and I always thought this was silly, but now I see really the utility, having some outlet for meditation can really help bring you into the present, where you can actually say, hey, what's important right now, to be able to prioritize and execute, because there's so much noise, there's so much distraction. I think social media, I don't know if social media is a good or a bad thing, and it's enriched our lives. We live in a great, beautiful house. It's given us this wonderful community of support. But I think it can also end up being a nefarious disease, and it can definitely feed into a lot of that stuff. And it also takes you out of reality. And we're so tuned into that algorithm that is strategically designed to take you away from reality and create these visceral emotional responses where you're never ever like just fucking calm. It's always like, what do I look at? What do I click on next? What comment like? Oh, this guy said a fucking shitty comment. It's like, it's constant garbage. that there's no point where you could just sit and almost like get your bearings and have quiet. And you know, it doesn't
You have to be deliberate.
yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, you know, like I think about the meditation people, the
Yeah.
cross legs and that kind of stuff. I don't think
Yeah.
it has to be that, but I think there has to be some level of stillness in your life.
Yeah,
Maybe it's
100%.
sitting in the sauna. Maybe it's just I like to stare at a fire and just be dumb, you know, like and just like,
and that's healthy is the funny thing. Like that's healthier than sometimes I don't know what to do. Like if I have been overstimulated, it's like, well, what do I do? You know, and it's like, oh, well, you know, if you're let's say my wife and my daughter are somewhere, well, what do I do?
Mhm.
I just got done with work. I'm tired. Do I scroll through media? No, like if it's the winter, you can sit in front of a fire. That's healthy. Just sit there and chill, you know, get some rest. Scrolling through Instagram is not rest.
It also creates this very unhealthy environment of comparison. Because
Absolutely.
everyone is looking, I think everyone is looking for validation, right? They
100%.
want validation and status.
Yep.
And so you may be doing something amazing, and
Yep.
then somebody like one-ups you a little bit, and now you feel like a piece of shit.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And you're like, it's not good enough. That thing sucks. And
Yeah.
like, you know, it really is it's a trip, honestly.
Yeah.
And I don't know where we're headed now, but like one of the things that I'm getting into and with our athletes is we started our Thundr men's group. And I was blown away how many of us are dealing with like really similar struggles.
Yeah.
And just trying to connect. You know, I think there's two things. One, being able to connect with yourself to really know who you are outside of the role the world assigned to you. Yep. Right? Like, who are you really? Like, what is your energy? Not this character you're playing on the internet, but like who you are. And then having a relationship with God and knowing God's love.
Yeah.
And you are constantly going to be pulled
because
away.
that's outside of ourselves. Like that's what's important about that. It's not you. It's like if you believe in a creator, that's outside of you. Like it means that there's a meaning to all this. You know what I mean? So,
and there's constantly a current in our country, in our world, in our culture that is designed to pull you away from that, to pull you away from yourself, to be like, hey, you're not good enough. You need to be this, you need to be that. Your clothes aren't cool. You know, like
right.
You know, and to take you away from God and to be like, no. Our validation is important. You need to get love from us. You can't just love yourself. It's not just about feeling God's unconditional love, but you need the world to love you too, right? And that's a hard thing to not just resist, but even if you are able to overcome it, to be able to constantly pull yourself back there.
Yeah, it's a practice, and it's definitely ebbs and flows for me. But if you have to sometimes look back a little bit further if you're having a bad week, bad month, bad year, or whatnot. Just compare where I am now to where I was. I'm not where I want to be, and I don't know if I ever will be. I think I maybe need to accept that a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you go back and you look to where I was when this was all happening, when I was getting off drugs and stuff, it's night and day. I can deal with situations now. I still see whatever was there as a kid, like the difficulty with dealing with situations and getting that depression, it's still there. I've just actually allowed myself to experience it. And now that I've had it happen so many times, a little bit more when I was coming off drugs, I would experience it. And now I still do, but it's less. You get used to it and you've kind of learned ways to cope with it. So when I have anxiety, for instance, I've got panic attacks before. It's nothing crazy. Like I used to get them a lot more, but every once in a while I'll still notice myself getting one.
What does that feel like? Like when you get a panic attack,
it feels like you're going to die. Like it feels like literally there's no description for it. When you've had an all out panic attack, your brain chemistry is forever changed. There's no way to describe it. And you know what? Actually, I had it before. This is funny. And I would attribute this to God. It's funny. Some difficult things that we go through that wouldn't seem like God, the same way that a loving parent might scold you a little bit, like who would God be if he didn't give a crap, right? So it was a panic attack that led to me getting off of the Suboxone ultimately, which was numbing me and I wasn't moving forward in life. I had my first panic attack while on drugs. And you know what I think it was? I think it was everything that had built up, that wall that was pushing everything back. It just crumbled. And I had anxiety attacks for 3 nights in a row.
So it was just a flood of everything.
I just felt like I was going to die. I literally, it hurt to exist. If I looked at my watch, I would say, how am I even going to make it to the next 30 seconds from now? It hurts to exist. Not I want to harm myself or I want to leave. It just hurt. Everything hurts. You feel like you're going to die. Is this my new normal? Am I ever going to be normal again? And then you calm down after a few hours and you still might be in the ebbs of anxiety, but it's not at the height of what it was. And so, even just knowledge of that, having that, for instance, with anxiety, having that happen, and going through it rather than having drugs to numb it, that in and of itself, I notice now when it comes on, the feeling that I would get that would be a panic attack, usually now it just goes away because whenever I feel it, I immediately make a work call. I immediately, just do something. And usually that's enough that a few hours later, I'm like, oh, totally forgot. Sometimes it's not. And sometimes I take a nap. If I get depressed or anxious, it's like, dude,
turns out I was just hungry.
Yeah, exactly. I put my headphones on, dude, and I put instrumental music on and I take a nap. I have a playlist specifically for anxiety. So those are tools that I did not have. And yeah, dude, it's just, it's a constant work in progress, right?
I did not expect the podcast to go this way, but I want to keep digging.
No, dude, it could go anyway. It could be funny.
Really important subject, and
yeah,
I think
100%.
the fact that you are such a funny guy externally speaks to the dichotomy and the complexity of being a human, right? And you mentioned something in there that I know not only have I felt before, but I've heard a lot before. You said, I'm not really where I want to be yet, or I'm not quite there yet. And I think that is this, it's like the carrot in front of the donkey. It's this like, you're never there. You're never there. It's never enough. You know, if I were to like, give me an example. If I was like, whatever, in my 20s, and I was like, hey, Dave, you know, when you're 43 years old, you're going to be doing this. You're going to be living here. You're going to have this wife. You're going to have this kid. You're going to have this house. How does that sound? I'd be like, that sounds like it's fucking paradise. That sounds like the best thing in the world. This concept of relativity, right? So it's always a moving target. Now I get here and I feel so blessed, right? But still I find myself seeping like, it's not enough. I need more. We need this, we need, blah, blah, blah. And it's, I think that it's a condition, right? And that condition is, it's like this idea of and this anxiety that comes from wondering, hey, God, am I fulfilling my purpose? Like, am I making the use of my time doing what I'm supposed to do on the planet now with this very finite amount of time and this
you end up old.
And I think a lot of people miss the mark on that because I agree. I don't think any of us have a purpose. Yeah. And I don't mean to depress people. No. When I came to this realization, I got a little depressed about it. But I was like, I don't think any of us have a purpose. I think our purpose is just to be as we are. And part of our life's journey is figuring out who are we, you know? But once we can figure that out, now it doesn't matter what we're doing. You know, we kind of already won, you know, as long as we are being true to ourselves.
I sort of agree. With that. Sorry to cut you off. I sort of agree. It's a little bit different. I do think that we have a purpose. However, my final rule of like finding this purpose, I'm a little bit more liturgical, like classical Christian background. Mm-hmm. And I actually read a lot of, like, if you looked at my bookshelf, it's like all theology and stuff. Yep. But I will say this, my last rule is do whatever you want. And it's kind of like, once you figure it out, as far as like, I don't want to say once you figure out your purpose, but the way that you described it, can you repeat kind of what you said in a nutshell? Because I heard something there that I resonated with.
Let me paint it to you a different way. You have a daughter. I have a daughter, right?
Yeah, there you go.
And when you look at your daughter, think about what do you want for her? I mean, for me, all I want is this beautiful little girl to be exactly who she is and not to be swept away and to feel disappointed
I get that.
Or to have someone get in the way of knowing that she is immensely loved. Yeah. You know, like that is the only thing. And I think that's for us as grown adults is we lose that. We lose that. Like, hey, we're just supposed to be who we are. And all these things we do are just vessels for us to express our energy
Yeah.
and our gifts. And that's it. Whether it results in the big house or the popularity or whatever, I think that's the most important thing, is that
I get that now.
we
Yeah.
are being who we're supposed to be, and that we know that we are all loved, and we're able to create these little circles to really amplify that, because there is kind of a common energy amongst people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we think of everyone as like a separate person, totally different identity, but I think that we all kind of come from the same consciousness.
Yeah.
We all come from the same pool. And this is just this person experiencing life through this body and this experience at this time. But, we're all connected in that way. And I think what's really important is that we identify that energy, that who we are, what it is that when we feel we're most of ourselves. Even people, people talk about like vibrational frequency. The highest vibrational frequency is authenticity. Right, of just being,
right.
It's just
I love it.
And I think that is really hard. And like you were saying, like, I'm not where I want to be. I'm like, maybe there's things to come in the future that are great or bad or happy or sad or easy or hard, whatever it is. That's all part of the human experience. But losing yourself is the real tragedy. That's really the only thing that
I agree.
Should
that makes sense to me.
You. I think about like when I was playing baseball, right? And I had a long baseball career, and it was such a deep part of my identity. And I wanted so bad. I'm like, I want to be a major leaguer. And I was so lucky to play as long as I did and have this career. But through my entire life up to that point, I would be introduced to friends and family and, colleagues or whoever as like, hey, this is Dave, the baseball player.
Yeah.
Like, oh, your brother, the baseball player, your buddy, the baseball player. And then all of a sudden one day, that baseball career comes to an end. And it's just like the Zoolander movie where he walks out after, Hans is the new guy in the scene. He looks at the puddle and he's like, who am I? And you're like, well, who am I? And it took me a while to really realize that baseball was just a vessel for me to express my gifts and express my
energy. Makes sense.
What I loved most about it was sharing that energy with my teammates. And being able to compete and being part of a team and having this common goal and common joy. And there are so many ways to do that. In fact, I would say what I'm doing now is a much more effective application of that, because I get to affect a lot more people and really focus on that, as opposed to worrying about my statistics and, what my ERA was this year. So I think
that makes sense.
I think that's just something worth considering. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. It's like baseball. It wasn't really who you were. It was something you did. And now, and then throughout life, you see different manifestations of that, because you're not going to be able to do the same thing that you did when you were 18-year-olds, once you're 40 years old or whatnot. Even with me, with CrossFit, it's frustrating because I started 4 years ago and I'm like, oh, I have buddies who are CrossFit Games athletes. So I'm like, why are they beating me? It's like, dude, you're like almost 40 and you've done CrossFit for 4 years. So
are you the kind of guy that just ends up like talking to a lot of people?
I do. Yeah. And I'm so competitive that I almost have this, it's almost kind of crazy, but I like it still. So I'll like text my buddies every once in a while who are elite athletes. And I'll, not like a lot of them, but like, a few of them are games athletes, stuff like that. I'll be like, hey, what would you get on this workout? And it's like a completely it's like a class workout. They're like, maybe I did pretty good that day and I got like 10 minutes. They're like, it'd take me about, like 342 or something. I'm like, and every single time I'm still like, dang, it's like I was expecting it to be close. It's funny because I'm still competitive no matter what. I just have to temper it now a little bit,
Well, I tell you, like, the reason I asked you about, like, you talk to a lot of people is like, I'm the kind of guy that just ends up talking to everybody. Like, I just like striking up a convo, and I'm genuinely interested to know who people are, but I do not really give a shit about what they do. Okay.
I agree.
And my parents come from a generation where it's like the status generation, right?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, your friend who's in the movies, your friend who's the athlete, the singer, your friend. And I'm like, the only reason why I have these friends is because I don't care what they do. I care about who they are.
Yeah.
Everyone else cares about what they do and they assign that value to them. And I know what that's like, and it sucks.
Yeah.
It's not a fun thing.
You know what I did at first? Here's what's funny about that. When I first started doing this and I first talked to some games athletes or befriended some people, I was like, oh, this is really cool for like a week. And then after I actually became friends with some of these people, because it was new to me, like CrossFit content creation, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. A games athlete, right? And then once you actually become friends with a person or get to know a person, you kind of just forget about that. And unless they're competing, and then I want to support them and I want to watch them, but I don't
It's
see
different though. It's different because you're more
totally
concerned
different.
about them than the result.
I
You know?
could care. I could care exactly. Like one of my good friends. It's so funny to me, but he's 19 years old. He's so mature, and he's his name's Ty Jenkins. He won the teen games 3 times, and last year he got knocked out early because there was in right before semifinals, there's a big penalty that went around. A bunch of people got penalized. He got penalized. And so he kind of, nobody knew who he was, but he's a fringe games athlete. Now he's just starting to perform again, and he's on everyone's radar, and he's expected to potentially make the games. And it's so funny because he was not competing for a long time because he had some injuries and he got knocked out of the game season early. And to me, he's just like, this is just this kid Ty, who I like to talk to because he's so mature and I get good perspectives on life from him. I think about, man, if I have a son one day, I hope he's like this. And you just forget totally about it. And then one weekend he's competing at Wadapalooza. He was RX division. So he won RX, which is great because Guimo Harris and a couple other guys who went on to the CrossFit Games won that secondary RX division. But it was so weird because I became friends with him while he wasn't even competing. And I'm like there, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot. He's like really good at CrossFit, this thing that he loves, But to me, he's just my friend,
Yep, exactly. And
then I saw him compete. I'm
so
like, dang,
cool.
he's really good.
It's different. It's different. You see it from a different perspective, and
exactly.
you get to enjoy it from a different perspective because you're thinking about not what it means to you, but you understand like maybe what it means to him,
Exactly.
I
was nervous. I was nervous for him. It was weird because he'd become a friend, and I was like, well, I just want, I just wanted him to do well and perform to his ability,
Hearing you talk about CrossFit, man, I feel so disconnected from
that. When's the last time you did a kipping pull-up?
Oh, no, 10 years? We go into the CrossFit gym, but like the games thing, I mean, like,
I see. Yeah.
Part of it is, we work in extremes. Well, I mean, we came for a decade of like, that was all we lived and breathed was CrossFit games, teaching seminars for.
I didn't even know you were seminar staff. Somebody told me that.
Oh, a decade of seminar staff. In fact, I calculated that at over 400 seminars, I trained 17,000 people. So chances are.
Did you know Eric Preston?
Yeah, I know Eric Preston.
Okay, yeah,
Eric seminars in San Diego. Eric's awesome, great guy. Great guy.
He went to one of the churches I went to back in San Diego. Yeah, no, me and him became.
Which church?
It was Barabbas Road.
Okay,
it's a smaller church. Eric. He's the one who introduced me to CrossFit. Like
he's great. He's just a great guy. He
literally brought me into class. I did class with him. You know what the great thing about Eric is? Most humble guy I've ever met. I had no idea that he was an L4. Somebody told me like 6 months after I did CrossFit. I didn't know anything.
Like a big time restaurateur as well.
Yeah, I knew that. He had a whole
restaurant.
Yeah. It's crazy. No, he didn't tell me like anything because it made me, I'm like, man, here's a good thing to learn from this guy.
Yep.
He doesn't have to tell people about what he does. Which was interesting.
I mean, it's just, being so deep in that world and then now, over whatever the past 6 years, 7 years, just kind of pulled ourselves out of it. Now we're almost completely like, I have no idea who the games athletes are. To be honest with you, I don't really care.
It's all good, dude.
I'm not worried about the open score. Yeah. The only thing I'm really concerned about is like, are we doing a good job for our people?
Well, dude, somebody told me that your strength program's awesome. 2 guys. So Jake Chapman, he's on the Savan. He has his own podcast on the Savan network. He's over from he's from the Isle of Man. And him and another guy, so there's Jake and Jan. He does strength programming, more kind of private. He's got like 20 clients. He's from Scotland. And they were telling me all about, they're like, oh yeah, they're the ones who told me you were seminar staff and stuff. And because I'm not an OG.
I did something, that was kind of like, I kind of cut the tether entirely.
Yeah.
Resigned from seminar staff.
Yeah.
Stopped doing CrossFit and said, hey, I'm going to learn everything that I can learn from the best bodybuilders in the world. And I immersed myself in that culture for about 5 years.
Yeah, that's cool.
Coaches and the athletes, and doing it myself, and, you know, competing at the highest amateur level, and like really learn, because you know, my background was strength and conditioning and elite athletic performance. And I think a lot of us think we know bodybuilding. Be like, oh yeah, I know bodybuilding, like 3 sets of 10. I started doing that. Training. And what I realized as soon as I started getting around these elite level athletes and coaches, I'm like, oh, I don't know shit about bodybuilding. Like, I'm at the bottom.
You mean bodybuilding and strength isn't just 15 minutes at the beginning of CrossFit class after I warm up for 3 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of like that, because at that point, like, we had status in CrossFit, and we had credibility and a track record, and we really knew it, and we had walked the walk. But with bodybuilding, we hadn't done anything. So being at the bottom of the totem pole made me really excited, because there was something to climb.
That is exciting.
And I'll tell you what, like, as someone coming from CrossFit into that world, man, it was a real advantage, because when you do CrossFit, you learn 2 really important things that most people that start bodybuilding don't know how to do. You learn how to move pretty well, right? So you learn how to perform these like really high utility functional movements that have a lot of bang for your buck. And you learn how to work really fucking hard. You learn intensity, right? So as soon as I was in there, you know, I didn't really look like a competitive bodybuilder at that time. But when I started training with these guys, I'm like, wow, this guy Dave really fucking trains hard. Like, he's outlifting big guys and all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, that was nice for me to get my stripes, you know, earn my cut in that one. But the big takeaway was, you know, when I'd kind of done that, now my goal was never just to be a bodybuilder. I wanted to take that back to CrossFit and be like, how do we collide these 2 worlds together with like elite level bodybuilding methods and this idea of functional fitness? Because my journey was all about figuring out, how do I continue to train hard as I get older and still see results? Because after back surgeries and shoulder surgeries, and the competitive stuff was like no longer really appropriate for me or Camille. We kind of felt like
I've got a slap tear right now. Really annoying.
Kind of feel kind of sad when you stop making progress. You know, like oh, man, this game was so fun.
I agree.
Because fitness had been gamified. It climbed all these levels, and now all of a sudden it's like,
it starts going the other way.
And you're like, well, this kind of sucks. Like, I don't want to go that way. I want to go the other way. And I feel like, really,
you feel like you found that now?
I feel like hypertrophy training is the cure, or the main answer for 2 main questions. So the first question is, how do I continue to train hard consistently as I get older? I think hypertrophy training is exactly how you do that, because the most common players with injury, you know, when you hurt yourself, are usually speed and load, right? I went too heavy, I got hurt. I went too fast, I got hurt. Maybe I did a complex movement and didn't really have the positions, or tried to fight through whatever and got hurt. Well, bodybuilding really solves for that, because good bodybuilding is usually pretty damn slow, with like, just, you know, honestly, like, not using momentum to lift the weights, but using muscular tension to move the weights. And the other thing it does is, you know, nothing is really at that like 1 rep max level. It's usually for volume.
1 second. I have something coming in my earphones that I have to find. Give me 1 second. I found it. Okay. I had something started playing on YouTube. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
In my earphone.
So, but then the second question is, okay, I figured out how to train hard and consistently. The second one is, how do I continue to see progress? And I think focusing on the musculature and building muscle mass is the best way for people to do that once they've tapped out their progress. Because I think what CrossFit does so well is it teaches you how to move. It teaches the wiring between the brain and the body. So like, you're super efficient. You know, like the Kipping pull-up, understanding the positions and the patterns, like, you're getting the most juice out of the squeeze when you're moving with that level of efficiency. And now, if you just now take the physical body and just increase the hardware, you've already got the wiring. So you're a pretty dangerous athlete.
The intensity too, it has to be ramped down a little bit. Like, even now, like, I can't do a lot of CrossFit is programmed as the WOD is pretty intense, 5 days a week. And people in their late 30s, like myself, I've noticed my body can't really handle that. So on days where I can tell that I'm beat up because I did 2 intense WODs in a row, I have to kind of, well, what do I do? I tend to focus more on strength because it doesn't beat me up as much. I can
Yep.
still throw in like an EMOM. Okay, what's a skill that I want to work on? Well, I suck at wall balls, so I could do an EMOM where I do 15 wall balls for 8 minutes, something easy that doesn't and then I could have a really good strength day or an accessory day.
So this is what CrossFitters are trained into. They're trained into thinking intensity is how many reps could I get and how heavy could I do them, right? And so part of that is like it's not really the intensity.
It's not even really original CrossFit though, is it?
Yeah,
the way it was written.
Or it's not like what you're doing, it's how you're doing it. So for instance, if you're like, I really can't go that hard anymore as I get older. Well, maybe you can't go that hard with that upper echelon of like loading 80% or more. But I'm willing to bet that you can work to failure with 70% of your 1 rep max on the bar, doing a 3-second negative and a 1-second pause to the point where you're more intense than you've really ever been before in the back squat, right? Yep. And so it's kind of redefining what intensity can be. And we use these things actually called intensification methods, which simply put, it's not ways to make heavy weights feel light. It's finding ways to make light weights feel hard. So that would be like tempos, drop sets, supersets, overload eccentrics, isometrics, cluster sets, giant sets, all these things that really, you're doing the same movement, but the way you're doing it is different and the intensity is through the roof. It's just something, and especially something that you've never really done before, so you're unaccustomed to it. So, we kind of see this trend where guys are kind of like leveling down and then they start changing that intensity level and zoom, they're like skyrocket back up, because that's the big missing piece is like hard, intense, and consistent is the ticket. But it's hard to be intense when you've only got one play in your playbook.
Yeah. And the thing for me is one thing that I have to do is because I have ADD so bad and get so bored. CrossFit, especially right now, since I've only done it 4 years, it keeps me engaged. It's the thing that keeps me going every day in the sense that I'm always going to show up to CrossFit. But as I get older, there's certain things that I don't do butterfly pull-ups because my shoulder's jacked. You know what I mean? So I'll do regular kipping and even muscle-ups. Unfortunately, like I love doing muscle-ups. I love all that stuff. But
you also got to ask yourself, like, what's the training effect?
Yeah. Honestly, the Metcon is, for me, the Metcon is actually just literally fun. Like I just like doing Metcon.
Yeah, like that's perfect. Like, hey, the training
so
effect
whether
is fun,
it doesn't matter to me.
The training effect is aerobic capacity, or the training effect is increased strength. Because once you know the effect, you might find that what you're doing isn't even the most effective way to get there.
Yeah. And so for me, that aspect of CrossFit is just fun. But so I think my goal with fitness still is it's in a weird phase. It's like I like getting better at CrossFit because I still am getting better at CrossFit. But honestly, like when we go all the way back to the mental health thing, it's that CrossFit is the only thing that I don't get bored with currently, right? So,
yeah, because you got to keep it changing and keep it interesting and having the group dynamic. I mean, that's so important.
It's so important. Which, by the way, I'm going to be late, so I've got like a couple minutes. I'm sorry.
No, I got to go.
Okay, perfect.
Right now that I'm waiting for my next call.
Okay,
we got to catch up. But Grant, dude,
we will.
It was so great talking.
It was great,
Thank you so much for sharing and being so vulnerable
absolutely.
too. This took a right-hand turn right off the bat, man.
Like I told you mentioned yourself how you'll just like honestly, and the whole authenticity thing. Like I'll just meet somebody, and if it goes that direction, it goes that direction. I don't care, right? Like I'm kind of an open book these days, so I'm glad we got to do it, man.
Awesome. All right, thanks, Grant. And where can people find you?
Yeah, so it's Instagram. If you just search, I've tried this. You don't have to do my handle. If you search Kipping It Real on Instagram or on YouTube, my stuff will come up. So anybody watching this, just subscribe and follow. It'd be great if you're into that kind of stuff. If not, don't, because then I won't get engagement.
All right, thanks, brother. I'm going to text you off air, but thank you so much for coming on. Have a great day and have a great weekend.
All right, later, man.
Later.